than 1 lakh people have signed up to the petition to save the internet. The campaign is going viral, but telecom companies insist that the Zero Airtel plan, for example, is actually a good idea. The Flipkart management has spoken out, saying that net neutrality is a vague idea, it cannot be implemented in any part of the world, and what they're doing is actually going to help the consumers. But we ask, is it really to benefit us, or is it to benefit their own bottom lines?
Should you pay more to use WhatsApp, Skype and YouTube? If telecom operators have their way, you could be doing just that. India's telecom regulator and service providers are now trying to regulate your access to websites and apps for profit.
Because right at this very minute, India's telecom companies are lobbying the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India to enact a regulation in a way that will change the way Indians are using the internet forever.
These telecom operators are going after something that's called net neutrality.
The debate over net neutrality is raging, with thousands petitioning the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India to save the internet. Right now, you can access any website or app you want and download information at the same speed. After the regulation, access to certain sites would only be allowed for a higher price, which means you might have to pay extra to use WhatsApp, Viber, Skype and other applications. And why? Because they're hurting telecom companies' voice calls and text message revenue.
The TRAI is undertaking a consultation on the whole issue of net neutrality. TRAI being an advisory body, their advice is certainly entitled to our respect, which I am awaiting.
Over the last few days, a massive online campaign has mobilized to fight for net neutrality. Take a look at one of the tweets that we've seen today that's causing a huge amount of follow-up, of retweet, of attention on this extremely important subject. Of course, it helps that it's a celebrity. Farhan Akhtar has actually tweeted out instructions on how to send an email to the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. People like Derek O'Brien, Digvijay Singh, who's also requested all of his followers on Facebook and Twitter to support the movement. Campaign on Facebook is no less. The AIB video explaining net neutrality has also gone completely viral now. And here's what you can do if you don't want to pay more for WhatsApp or Skype or any of the other applications that stand to be affected. You can give your responses to 20 questions released by the telecom regulator before the 24th of this month. Submit your response at advqos@trai.gov.in or just log on to savetheinternet.in. Bureau Report, headlines today.
When I was discussing the Zero Airtel plan with a relative of mine, she said, so what's the problem? If I'm getting free data, how can that be a bad thing? And one of the problems with the net neutrality movement is because it involves very technical and complicated factors, it's not easily understood. So I'm going to try and put this in context for you. What does the movement for net neutrality really mean, and how does this impact you, what the telecom companies are trying to do? Here are how things operate at this time. At this time, there's equal speed for every website and application. It stays the same regardless of which website. It's a new website, big website, small website. It's all the same data speed. What's happening now is that telecom companies want you to pay extra for using WhatsApp, WeChat, any of what they call the over-the-top services, which they say cut into the SMS revenue that they generate. They want you to pay extra. They're signing deals with these big internet companies, and they're making it seem as if to you it's coming for free, but actually you're having to pay more for it in the end. Let's try and break this down further for you. So at this time, all companies work the same way, but if the zero data plan, Zero Airtel plan is actually implemented, here's how things will change. For the big companies, you can move at the speed of a Ferrari. For the rest of the companies, the internet broadband speed can potentially be much slower, because naturally if the telecom company has a deal with one of these companies and they're making money off it, they will give them better data speeds, and a new startup is suddenly disadvantaged. So you will have to pay separately. Right now you pay for one data pack. Here you'll have to pay separately for each kind of service, whether it is a messenger service, a video service. And what could also happen is that big companies like Apple, which are selling expensive products, their websites could load immediately on the click of a button, whereas if it's a new company or an unknown company or a small company, their website speeds could be much slower, making it a highly frustrating and irritating experience for users. So in the end, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and that is what we need to fight against. I've tried to do my bit to explain what net neutrality means to you, but folks at the AIB stand-up group have also done a video which has gone viral where they explain why this movement is so important. So before we get into the newsroom showdown for this evening, sit back just for a few moments, watch the AIB team explain how you can step in and play a role in this internet inqilab movement.
What is net neutrality and why should I care?
Net neutrality means
1. All content is equal and all sites must be equally accessible.
Net neutrality means that whether it's a Honey Singh video
Or a breaking news report about a terrorist attack. Or a cat gif. All content on the internet is equal and must be equal always.
whatever your choice, neutrality means that once you have an internet plan,
You should be allowed to access any website you want.
without discrimination.
2. Neutrality also means that no matter what telecom operator you're with, you should be able to access all data on the internet at the exact same speed.
simply put, just because your telecom company hypothetically has a deal with, like, say, Flipkart,
Shouldn't mean that they can make the Amazon website or an independent retailer's website load slower for you.
So slow, in fact, that you eventually give up and you're forced to shop at Flipkart because it's the only one that opens fast. Except right now, telecom operators want the option of doing exactly that.
Yes.
which sucks because, let's be honest,
The only thing worse than no internet is slow internet. Telecom operators want to carve up the internet into a bunch of different sections such that you have to pay to access every single one of them separately.
Imagine you go to a children's park and you pay 100 rupees to get it.
And then you head over to a slide because, hey, who doesn't love slides? But a guy stops you and says, sorry sir, if you want to use this slide, you have to buy the slide access pack, sir, for extra money, you know?
and so you decide to go on the swings instead, except the same man stops you and he says,
Nope.
To use the swing, you need to buy special swing set pack, sir. Come on, sir.
Okay, fine, yaar. Okay, fine.
you buy access to the swing pack for another 50 bucks, except
When you try to swing fast, the swing refuses to go faster. Oh, sir, if you want to go fast, you have to pay even more for the high-speed swing pack, sir. Otherwise, sorry, you can't go fast, sir.
at this point you're probably thinking,
Wait, what the hell was that original 100 rupee charge for if I can't even use it to do anything?
Oh, sir, that was just for the privilege of standing on the grass, sir.
On the big newsroom showdown tonight, I'm joined by Rohan, Joshi. He's a member of the stand-up comedy group AIB. Squaring off against him tonight is Ravi Visheshwar Shraddha Prasad. He's a consultant for various IT and telecom companies. Welcome to the both of you. I want to go across to Rohan Joshi first because the Airtel ad says that this is Airtel Zero, that consumers are going to get WhatsApp, they're going to get YouTube, and they're going to get it for free. And a lot of people watching this broadcast have that one basic fundamental question: if I'm going to get it for free, why is Airtel Zero such a bad idea? Why are you also opposed to it?
Well, for starters, we're not opposed to the idea of Airtel Zero entirely. It's net neutrality as a whole that we're talking about. Airtel Zero is just one aspect of net neutrality that needs to be looked at. There's a bunch of other issues in there. So to suggest that Airtel Zero is something that we're dead against or Airtel Zero is the only thing that we're against, that's not true at all. The idea is also when you give people WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever for free, what you're also doing is you're disturbing one of the fundamental principles of the internet, which is that all data and all content has to be equal, because you're shutting out a lot of other apps and a lot of other startups and you're setting a dangerous precedent across the spectrum of apps that could allow telecom operators to willfully and wantonly just shut out other players as per their whims and fancies, which is something that we cannot allow for.
That's a very compelling argument, Mr. Prasad, and this net neutrality campaign has gone viral. It's all over the internet, more than 1 lakh emails already with the TRAI, and people essentially saying that big companies want to shut out small companies from joining the internet party. The Flipkarts of the world, the Zomatos of the world, get together with the Airtels of the world, and then you foreclose the possibility of another small startup becoming tomorrow's Flipkart or Zomato. Is this not hugely disadvantageous to all small startups, sir?
No, see, this is a prime example of what happens when you have people who do not know engineering trying to make this very complex decisions about engineering matters. Net neutrality is a utopian concept, sounds excellent in theory. In fact, even in theory, I would support it. There are only 5 countries which have legally mandated net neutrality, and there is not a single network in the world which could implement net neutrality because such a network is impossible to be built. In Europe, only Netherlands has mandated net neutrality, but there is no net neutral network there. USA is debating it right now, and it's a very complex debate. It is only Brazil, Chile, Ecuador and Mexico which have mandated net neutrality. But I'm saying you cannot have net neutrality, you cannot implement net neutrality at all. You can try to have all the
this Rohan Joshi is something that was said by Sachin Bansal of Flipkart as well, that the international companies are already doing it. When an Indian player ties up with Airtel, for example, that's when everyone has a problem. But the reality is Amazon, for example, he claims has been doing this all the while. And even Mr. Prasad argues that net neutrality sounds good in principle, but is impossible to implement when it comes to internet architecture. Let Rohan Joshi respond. I'm coming back to you, Mr. Prasad.
Yeah.
Again, sir, while you may argue that we cannot enforce net neutrality, I would rather live in a world where we at the very least aspire towards it and thus keep telcos in check from being able to do anything. When you consider the fact, when you talk about all of these engineering problems that are there, I'm not doubting any of that. But when you consider the fact that at the end of the day, we live in a country where the top 3 telcos have 66% of mobile data share, that puts them in a very strong position already to make certain decisions and take them out of user hands in terms of everything from pricing to access. I feel like if you don't aspire towards net neutrality, you're putting a lot more power in their hands than you are putting in the user's hands.
No, and why shouldn't, Mr. Prasad, India be one of the 5 countries that says President Obama has spoken out in favor of net neutrality? Why can't India be one of the countries that says, in principle and to the extent possible, we favor net neutrality? Why should we even allow companies to create a completely skewed field where big companies prosper and small companies suffer?
See, this is an ideal situation which is impossible to put. See, you can, everybody violates the principle of net neutrality. All the operators are doing it. In fact, all the ISPs are doing it. All the content providers are doing it. Like you have the tie between Facebook and
no, why should we not try and change that? At the center of this campaign is the attempt to try and change that. You're saying that it's being done and you're saying so very nonchalantly. Why should we not raise our voice to try and change the status quo?
See, you can say that it's a good idea to have access to the internet, cheap, quick and easy access to whichever website you want. Now, what net neutrality says is that all data has to be, every bit of data has to be treated the same, irrespective of its platform, irrespective of its technology, irrespective of the equipment used. Now, that is not the way the internet is built.
One of the things that you said, sir, was that everybody is already violating net neutrality, so let's institutionalize it. That's exactly the sort of attitude that people have taken with bribery, and that's the problem. Whereas everybody is doing it, let's just all do it. It doesn't
network, which I don't think is possible.
It doesn't work that way. And the other thing is, it's very convenient to turn around now. And when you look at principles that have when you look at principles that have brought the internet to where it is today, where they have brought the internet to everybody's doorstep, where they have made it an indispensable part of everybody's life, something that has been the cornerstone of the evolution of the internet to where it is today, and now you say let's reject those fundamental principles of evolution in lieu of this sort of telco-backed this thing, that strikes me as being slightly disingenuous of the telcos, no?
Do you think that the people will be able to mount an effective campaign? Where does your campaign go from here, Rohan?
Well, actually, here's the thing. We only have until the 24th of April, which is one of the largest problems that we have, and that's one of the things we need to address. This is a hugely complex argument. Like, one of our starting points today has been Airtel Zero and Flipkart and all of that. But the thing we cannot lose sight of is that this is literally one tiny aspect of the neutrality debate. There are issues of, in the paper, if you look at the tri-paper, there are issues of possibly asking apps to need licensing from telcos. There are issues of so many of these things that need to be looked at. Because, for example, when you take something like licensing, where the idea is that an app might need licensing or an app might need to pay a telco, that opens the door to backdoor censorship, for example, where if you are worried that an app is going to sort of affect, a stand against a government or against a telco, you could just deny a license to that app on the basis of that. So there's so many complex arguments that the 24th of April or the 8th of May is not enough. There needs to be a much larger conversation before we decide policy. This cannot happen in the next 2 weeks. This is part of the problem.
And the fact is that telecom companies have their own apps, and you can't create a situation where the person who's giving you the bandwidth runs his own apps and can give his own apps an advantage over a startup app that any of us might try and create. This also really requires. Yes, Rohan, quick final words.
Yep. Also, the other thing is, I know right now we're drowning in analogies trying to explain net neutrality, and we have been over the last couple of days. But here's how I look at it. If you manufacture a road, it's one thing to charge a heavy commercial vehicle or a small vehicle, etc., on the basis of their size, which is what we do with data. Larger the data, the more you pay for that data. But the idea that A, you charge me differently depending on where I want to go, if it's the same distance, that's ridiculous. And B, also wanting to charge apps to use your road is kind of like charging a car maker. Because it makes cars, as a road operator, you feel like you should get money from the car maker as well as the user who's paying you toll. That just seems like you're double dipping, honestly, to me.
And that is something which cannot be allowed to pass. This campaign is building, and here's how you can join this campaign. www.savetheinternet.in. You can go in and sign the petition and put some serious pressure on the government so that they know where the will of the people is on this highly contentious issue. Mr. Prasad and Rohan Joshi, for joining us on the newsroom tonight. Thank you very much.
Companies are lobbying the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India to enact a regulation in a way that will change the way Indians are using the internet forever.
These telecom operators are going after something that's called net neutrality.
The debate over net neutrality is raging, with thousands petitioning the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India to save the internet. Right now, you can access any website or app you want and download information at the same speed. After the regulation, access to certain sites would only be allowed for a higher price, which means you might have to pay extra to use WhatsApp, Viber, Skype and other applications. And why? Because they're hurting telecom companies' voice calls and text message revenue.
The TRAI is undertaking a consultation on the whole issue of net neutrality. TRAI being an advisory body, their advice is certainly entitled to our respect, which I am awaiting.
Over the last few days, a massive online campaign has mobilized to fight for net neutrality. Take a look at one of the tweets that we've seen today that's causing a huge amount of follow-up, of retweet, of attention on this extremely important subject. Of course, it helps that it's a celebrity. Farhan Akhtar has actually tweeted out instructions on how to send an email to the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. People like Derek O'Brien, Digvijay Singh, who's also requested all of his followers on Facebook and Twitter to support the movement. Campaign on Facebook is no less. The AIB video explaining net neutrality has also gone completely viral now. And here's what you can do if you don't want to pay more for WhatsApp or Skype or any of the other applications that stand to be affected. You can give your responses to 20 questions released by the Telecom Regulator. Should you pay more to use WhatsApp, Skype and YouTube? If telecom operators have their way, you could be doing just that. India's telecom regulator and service providers are now trying to regulate your access to websites and apps for profit.
Because right at this very minute, India's telecom company.
More than 1 lakh people have signed up to the petition to save the internet. The campaign is going viral, but telecom companies insist that the zero Airtel plan, for example, is actually a good idea. The Flipkart management has spoken out, saying that net neutrality is a vague idea, it cannot be implemented in any part of the world, and what they're doing is actually going to help the consumers. But we ask, is it really to benefit us, or is it to benefit their own bottom lines?